Hey guys, Timothy here. It is Friday, so we probably won't be getting any spoilers over the weekend, so spoiler videos should continue on Monday, but we're going to start straight out of the gate with Tamiyo here. I think a lot of people expected a Tamiyo. I don't think anybody expected it to be a 3-color Planeswalker, maybe 2-color, but here we are. Tamiyo Field Researchers, Bant colors, and it's a 4-drop, so pretty good, and it's in very strong colors right now. All 3 of these colors are kind of the top colors in Standard right now, so pretty insane right off the bat. 1 green, white, and blue starts off with 4 loyalty, and look at the abilities. +1, choose up to 2 target creatures until your next turn. Whenever either of those creatures deals combat damage, you draw a card. This is pretty good. It shouldn't be too hard in those colors to scale maybe a 2 and a 3-drop, especially with things like Sylvan Advocate, Tireless Tracker. You have plenty of creatures to play so that you can get the maximum effect out of this. It also lasts until your next turn. So if you're playing like Sylvan Advocates or something that can attack and block, you could potentially draw cards off your attack. And then if you have to block your opponent's creature next turn, you draw another card. It's whenever they deal combat damage. It doesn't have to be to a player. You can hit an opposing Planeswalker. They can get blocked and hit a creature. As long as they hit something and deal damage, you're drawing a card. And you draw a card for each one. The way it's worded, if both of your creatures deal damage, you draw 2 cards. So that's already an incredible +1 in a color that can really support it too, or a color combination that can really support it. +1, draw 2 cards is kind of what it says. Sometimes you can even run your creature out into a trade, and you're still going to benefit from it. That creature's going to replace itself. So Tamiyo's +1 is already sick. The -2 here says, tap up to 2 target non-land permanents. They don't untap during their controller's next untap step. So first thing, this doesn't have to hit creatures. It can hit things like Pyromancer's Goggles, just anything that's not a land, essentially. And it's up to 2, so you can just hit 1 creature if you need to. It freezes 2 non-land permanents, which is pretty good. -2, a lot of times creatures like this that have a plus that gives you card advantage and a minus that deals with creatures, you're going to probably have to drop this and use the minus right away a lot of times. So don't expect to be popping off Tamiyo emblems that often. But just the -7 here says draw 3 cards, and then you get an emblem with you may cast non-land cards from your hand without paying their mana cost. So Ancestral Recall plus Omniscience in 1 emblem, and you can't interact with the emblem. So you draw 3 is really nice there because it's going to give you some juicy targets to just automatically dump on the field. Not to mention if you're playing multiple Tamiyos, once you emblem off, you can just play the next Tamiyo for free and start just using its plus for advantage and then drawing a bunch of cards. So the Tamiyo actually scales into another Tamiyo really nice. It does take a total of 4 turns to even get this going. Or to be able to -7 it, and a lot of times you'll have to use that -2 to really get in there, especially since the +1 encourages you to be attacking, and there aren't really that many Vigilance creatures aside from Advocate, so I wouldn't expect to be just plus in your Tamiyo without opposition. But the fact that this is in Bant colors really surprises me. You know, Sarkhan had a really, Sarkhan just blew everybody out of the water, and then it didn't see any play at all. So I'm not going to go and say that Tamiyo is going to be played, but it's a 4-drop walker with a bunch of really good utility abilities. And it's in a color combination that's very, very strong in Standard right now. After rotation, I can see it going down a little bit, but this seems really, really good. I'm pretty impressed with it, and yeah, I'll definitely be looking to pick up a copy. Looking at a much less impressive card, we have Wailing Ghoul. This is a 2-mana 1/3 zombie, and it says when he enters the battlefield, put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. So it's kind of a replacement for Screech and Scab with arguably worse stats. Screech and Scab is a 2/1. This is a 1/3, and they have the same ability for the same mana cost. This is the type of card that if you were playing a self-mill deck, you might play a couple of them, but you wouldn't load up on 4 of them because it is very low impact. It does get your mill going, but not by a lot, and its body is a little bit irrelevant. It blocks advocates, I guess. It blocks a lot of 2/3s, but once a 3/3 hits the board, this comes a lot worse. Also, not really what we're looking for zombie decks. I think our self-mill cards are already decent enough, especially since Gisa and Geralf mill 4 when they enter the battlefield, and you can also play something like Mindrak Demon to mill 4. Also card like a couple sorceries that mill 3 and so on and so forth. So I'm not impressed with this card. In draft, it's fine. If you're looking to do graveyard shenanigans, it's a card you'll pick up, but Screeching Scab's never been an impressive card, and I don't think this one is either. It's a common, though, so what are you going to do? Prey Upon. So this is a reprint, and the art is just fantastic. If you've seen the older Prey Upon, it's a werewolf attacking a guy or something like that, and now it's a Eldrazi werewolf attacking a werewolf. I love these throwbacks that they're doing with like Tree of Perdition and Make a Wish and Prey Upon. It's just really cool, but the effect is the same. It's just a 1 green sorcery. A target creature you control fights another target creature. So definitely not as good as Rabid Bite. You would play Rabid Bite before you play this in a heartbeat, but if you're playing a green deck with creatures that are above the curve, or you just need to get rid of a problematic creature, this is going to do it. It's green's best way of removing creatures from the battlefield, even if sometimes you have to 2-for-1 yourself to get rid of something bigger. It works really nicely with Death Touch creatures. Fight effects always do. And there are a couple of those floating around in green-black, so I can see this card being pretty good. Also good for Delirium. If you're trading off a creature to kill an opponent's creature, you're getting a sorcery and a creature in your graveyard, so that's 2 for the boat. But I don't know. It's a good card. You'll play it. This one I don't know what to think of because it's an uncommon, and that kind of surprises me, but Peace of Mind is an enchantment for 1 and a white. And it has an activate ability that says, pay a white and discard a card, you gain 3 life. Now, on its surface, that's not really good. Discarding a card to gain 3 life and having to pay mana for it is actually pretty bad. This does let you use Madness cards pretty easily, but white is not a Madness color, so I'm thinking like if you're playing white-red or something like that, or white-black, this card goes up a little bit in value. It lets you kind of mitigate land flooding by gaining life off of it. What this does do nicely is white actually has a decent number of Delirium cards between things like Topplegeist and Paranoid Parish Blade, Reaper of Flight Moonsilver, so on and so forth. So this is better for Delirium, I think, than Madness, just because white is not a Madness color. But on its base, if you're just using this to gain life, you would cut this card in a heartbeat. It's not good. It's not going to save you in a game when you're behind. Just pitching cards to gain 3 life is not really worth it in the long run. You would rather have your cards actually do something than just gain you 3 life. It's not that significant. It's weird that it's an uncommon, but take what you will. We have another Emerge card here, and it's in black. So Merge is not tied to simply green-blue like I thought it would be. But we have Distended Mindbender. It's 8 mana on its surface. The Emerge cost is 5 and 2 black, so 7 mana for the Emerge cost. And remember, with Emerge, you sacrifice a creature, and then you reduce the Emerge cost by the converted mana cost of the creature you sacrifice, and then you can cast this card for its reduced Emerge cost. When you cast Distended Mindbender, target opponent reveals his or her hand. You choose from it a non-land card with converted mana cost 3 or less, and a card with converted mana cost 4 or greater. That player discards those cards. So you're essentially trying to get 2 cards out of your opponent's hand. Sometimes this will brick on one or the other, but it's never going to brick on either one, assuming your opponent isn't on just lands, in which case you'll probably win the game. This is also a 5/5, by the way. So remember, you can cast this for 8, and it'll be like serviceable. By the time you're casting 8 mana creatures just straight out, your opponent's probably got an empty hand. So you really want to Emerge this. And I've used this for all the examples on Emerge so far, and I think it's kind of like a good textbook way of looking at it. Think about sacrificing a 3-drop creature. That reduces the cost of the Emerge by 3, meaning that you pay 2 and double black, so 4 mana total, and you can scale these 3-drop creatures into your 4-drop Emerge cards. And if you manage to do that, you're really, really ahead on board. The bodies are pretty big. For 8 mana, this card's like, okay. But for 4 mana, this card's pretty incredible, and I wouldn't mind sacrificing a creature to pick 2 cards out of my opponent's hand and be left with a 5/5. I really like the effect, too, because it's going to get a card that they can cast right away, and then it's going to get one of their late game cards, or it's going to miss, and then they don't have those cards in general. So you will expect to miss pretty often on this, on one effect or the other, but it is still like a Mind Rot type effect. Discard. Well, I'm more of a double Thought Seize than it is a Mind Rot, because you actually get to look at the hand, but it's really nice effect. I think this card is strong. I'm really impressed with the Emerge cards. They are all very powerful. We've got a Collective Brutality here. This is 1 and a black. According to Mythic Spoiler, it's 1 and a green, but that is false. It's right there. 1 and a black for a sorcery with Escalate. Now check this out. The Escalate cost is to discard a card, which is relevant when you see the effect. So for each card you discard, you can choose one more mode on this. You get to choose one essentially for free by casting the card. And you can discard up to 2 more cards to use both of the other abilities. So your effects are either target opponent reveals his or her hand, you choose an instant or sorcery card from it, that player discards that card, or target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn, or target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Now, the mode here that I think you would use most often is the second one. If you're just casting this for 2 mana and you don't want to discard a card, you're going to use the second mode and kill off a creature a lot of times. But discarding a card is actually a really cool Escalate cost because it doesn't require you to pump extra mana into it, meaning that if you're trying to madness cards out, you can use this card as a madness enabler while also increasing the potency of the effect. It's a really cool design for a card. So 2 mana to do all these effects, 2 mana discard 2, if you're really late in the game, seems good, or if you just have cards that are dead cards, seems good. The first and last abilities aren't like super impressive. The first one will brick a lot if that's what you're going for, so don't play it just as a discard spell because it will miss in a lot of games. And the last ability is not really worth a card either. Think of Alms of the Vein. That's not a good card, and this is actually weaker than Alms of the Vein. But if you can pitch a land to attack that ability on to the -2/-2, it gets a lot better. So imagine a card that said 2 mana, kill a creature, and opponent loses 2 life, you gain 2 life. That would be really good. Like Sorin's Thirst or Farika's Cure type card or something like that. That's a good effect. And then if you even have another dead card, you can at least get a sneak peek at your opponent's hand and hopefully grab an instant or sorcery from it. So this card's a really cool design, really nice. As someone pointed out in another video, sorry I can't give you credit, I didn't catch your name, but Escalate is pretty much just Entwine with a third ability that you can tack on, but it's nice that they kind of tinkered with the cost here, so it's not just mana to Escalate. Discarding a card is really cool, so I would expect to see some other Escalate designs, maybe like sacrifice a creature to get another effect or something like that. That'd be pretty cool. It is a rare. I think it's a little weak for a rare, to be honest, but if you're in a Madness-based deck, it gets a lot better. Ulvenwald Captive, kind of our mana dork, I guess. It's a 2-mana Werewolf Horror. It's a 1/2, and it has Defender. It's kind of janky, but you're not going to be using it to attack very often anyway. It taps to add green to your mana pool, so ignore anything else about the card. It's a 2-mana accelerant. Those cards are always good. Think of Leaf Gilder, Hedron Crawler, Gilded or Golden Hind, like all the examples from the past 15 billion sets. Whisper of the Woods, like these 2-mana creatures that come down and immediately tap for mana on the next turn. That gets you your 4-drop early, and we have a lot of late game stuff that is very relevant in this format, so a mana accelerant seems good. I would already peg this, having not seen the entire set, as probably one of the best green commons. The fact that it can attack is a setback, but you're not using it to attack most of the time. Now it has a little bit more, which makes it even better. For 7 mana, 5 and 2 green, you can transform him into Ulvenwald Abomination. This is an Eldrazi werewolf, a 4/6 that taps for double colorless mana. This seems like a really weird effect on the other side, so if you're playing a lot of really big creatures, this gets a lot better. But I don't imagine I'd be tapping this for double colorless very often. This is not Battle for Zendikar or Oath of the Gatewatch, where you need that double colorless that often. Think of Kozilek's Channeler, the 4/4 for 5 that taps for double colorless. That was really good because oftentimes you had an 8 or 9 drop in your deck. But I guess if you're playing this big werewolf deck, and all the werewolves require you to dump a lot of mana into them, this second effect is pretty good. Force X is a decent body, but not really for 7 mana, so I really like this card for the front side, not so much the back side. Also note that you can tap this for green and use that for its own transform ability, so you really only need to get up to 6 lands before you can start doing this. But yeah, this card is solid on the front side, and the back side's really just bonus. At some point, you're not going to need extra green mana floating around, so to be able to turn this into an actual attacker and blocker is pretty nice. Mana Dorks, usually pretty good. Maybe it's premature to say that it's the best green, or one of the best green commons, but they usually are, to be fair. Emrakul's Evangel. This is a 2 and a green human horror, and it's a 3/2. It's a rare as well. And it says, tap, sacrifice Emrakul's Evangel and any number of other non-Eldrazi creatures. Put a 3/2 colorless Eldrazi horror creature token onto the battlefield for each creature sacrificed this way. So I think this is the 3rd card so far that we've seen with the 3/2 horrors attached to it. Including that Wharf guy and Hanweir. This is a pretty decent effect. You want to be upgrading your creatures, obviously. The fact that this sacrifices itself and replaces itself with a 3/2 is pretty interesting. It means that you can kind of use it to blank a removal spell. But if you're playing a lot of really early game creatures or a lot of like spirit tokens or zombie tokens, this just upgrades them all into 3/2s, which is pretty nice. Notice that you can't sacrifice an actual Eldrazi creature, and this doesn't really help against board wipes because you'll get all your creatures before the board wipe actually resolves. So I'm not sure what exactly this is supposed to be played in. I know in Standard, it's got a lot of potential with cards like Secure the Wastes, or these like mass Nissa tokens, plant tokens. It even upgrades Gideon tokens. So the fact that this slots pretty nicely into token decks already is pretty good. I could see this being a replacement for like Tireless Tracker or something like that. It doesn't give you as much value as Tireless Tracker, but it does turn a lot of your tokens into real beaters. So it's a pretty strong card. But I don't really know what to think of it in draft. You have to build a very specific deck where you're not downgrading your creatures on this, but it's pretty nice. And the fact that you, keep in mind, you can't just sacrifice another creature and replace it. You have to sacrifice the Evangel plus some other creatures, or just the Evangel itself. So you can't use this to blank a removal spell on just one of your creatures. It does blank it, but you lose the Evangel after that. So I don't know what to think of it right now. It's a human. Sure. But it's a pretty interesting card. I'll have to remind myself what this one does. I know it's a vampire. We have 3 mana, 3/2, Stromkirk Mystic. It's 2 and a red, so it has Trample, which is weird on a vampire, but it makes sense with its ability, and it's vampire horror as well. So it tramples, and it says whenever it deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of your library. Until the end of turn, you may cast that card. So this is a rare. It's a fair rare as well. It's not like super busted if you're at a GP or something. Like this is a card you'd be okay opening in a pack, but not super crazy. It also, you can madness it for 1 in a red, which is decent. Just throwing these extra cheap madness costs on cards make these a lot better too. And we've already seen some pretty good enablers. I don't really know what to think of this. Usually this kind of effect in Limited is a little bit on the weaker side. Like Abbot of Carol Keep is a strong card, but not as strong in Limited. Same goes for cards like Ire Shaman or anything that does this sort of exile top card, play it until end of turn thing. The bad thing here is that this is often just going to trade for a creature. You might get a trigger off of it because it has trample, so if they're blocking with like their 2/2 or their 2/1 or something like that, not only is your opponent trading up on mana, but you're losing this guy and you're really only going to get 1 trigger. Ideally, this card is at its best when it can just hit your opponent and your opponent can't do anything about it, but then you're probably already winning anyway. But yeah, it's card advantage for red. It's kind of what they're trying to do to give red some draw power. Obviously weaker than just straight blue draw power. I don't think this card is actually that strong, but I would first pick it from a pack that doesn't have anything better to offer, and I'd be pretty happy with it. Now, it's not crazy. Moving on, a couple cards that came out late yesterday. The last card I talked about was Murder, so 2 more cards here. I'm going to look at Whispers of Ember. This has a lot of potential in Modern, I think. I don't know if it'll actually see play in Modern, but it has the potential there. So this is a 1 and a black for a sorcery that says target opponent discards a card at random. It also has Delirium, so if you have 4 different card types in your graveyard, your opponent discards 2 cards at random. So it turns from pretty poor spell into Hymn of Turok or whatever you want to call it. And if you've ever played against that in Cube or something, you know that can be a really devastating card to be played against you. The fact that it discards randomly means that if your opponent can pull this off early enough, it can pitch lands out of your hand. It can wipe your best creatures and leave you with an all-land hand, or sometimes it can blank and just hit a land and creature, and it's still a 2-for-1. On its base, this card is bad. You would never cast 2 mana, discard a card at random. That's pretty poor. And you're never going to be able to, in Limited at least, you're never going to be able to Delirium this by turn 2. I don't think there are any cards that can get you turn 2 Delirium. You can get it as early as turn 3, to the best of my knowledge, with something like Vessel of Nascency. But then your opponent's already played out their lands. It gets a lot worse. This is the type of card that's better on the draw as well. Or I'm sorry, better on the play, and actually much worse on the draw. I don't really like discard spells in Limited as well. I don't think they do enough. Sometimes you get your opponent and you're like, haha, I got you, there goes your best card or something. But there's a lot of graveyard shenanigans. A lot of cards have value from the graveyard in this set. Your opponent might have Madness and Delirium cards as well that this is just really bad against. And the number of times that you'll lock your opponent out of the game with this is much, much less than the number of times you'll just be a minor annoyance with this card. Not to mention, if you somehow can't pull off Delirium, this card is absolutely terrible. So I'll let you guys speculate on Modern. I feel like Delirium is very possible in Modern by turn 2, and people have already speculated on the 1/1 Death Touch that gets +2/+2 with Delirium. I don't know. I don't see it happening. I think some people are counting Delirium as being much easier than it is, even though it's not the easiest thing in the world. But I don't know. I don't like the card very much, but it does have potential. I will say that. All right, last card for today. Common green card, 1 in a green. Grapple with the Past. If you've seen the card Make a Wish, this art is a throwback to that card as well. So check out the comparison side by side. It's pretty cool. But it's an instant, and it says put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. Then you may return a creature or land card from your graveyard to your hand. So again, kind of a self-mill card. This is essentially a green version of Corpse Churn from Oath of the Gatewatch or Battle for Zendikar, whichever one it was in. And Corpse Churn kind of sucks, to be honest. It's just not a good card. Usually I want my self-mill cards to come attached to a body like that zombie we saw at the beginning of this video. I don't want my self-mill cards to take up a whole turn. It is nice that you get a creature or land back here. Getting a land back is like, okay, whatever. Getting a creature back is what you're going to do more often. But I would rather just draw on that card and then self-milled with a creature instead or something like that. So, I don't know. And it also feels like if we're going to be playing self-mill in Standard, it's going to be blue-black instead of green-black. But I don't know. Deathmist Raptor's still a thing, I guess. I don't love the card. I would not advocate for playing a card like Corpse Churn, so I definitely wouldn't advocate for playing like that. In Standard, I don't see it at all. It's not a really good regrowth effect because Pulse of Murasa is pretty much the same thing, gains you 6 life, and I think Pulse of Murasa has just more reach than this card does with the life gain. So I don't see this in Limited. I would advise against playing it in Limited unless you need self-mill that bad, and I would advise against playing it in Constructed. So I think this is kind of a bust of a common, but it's there. It does fill a role, so sometimes you need this sort of card, and as far as Limited goes, you'll pick it up occasionally. I wouldn't. It's not unplayable. It's just not very good. So yeah, that's it for today. I'm sure there'll be a couple more spoilers by the end of the day, but I'll be out of town for a while. If there are more spoilers, I won't get to them until Monday anyway. I might see if my buddy wants to do the next video with me, since I'll be hanging out with him. But yeah, a lot of cool things. We're starting to see less of the rares and more of the commons and uncommons here. But yeah, Tamiyo is huge game for Standard. just back-breaking card to play against in Limited if you can pull off the colors. Emerge is continuing to impress me. I am happy to see more design space for Escalate, so that seems pretty interesting. And then we've got a Mana Dork too. The rest of these cards I think are fine. From a Limited perspective, they're all playable, not bad. Some of them are better than others. Well, I don't know. Peace of Mind seems like probably the worst card out of this set so far. But maybe I'm misevaluating it. Maybe I'm missing something here. At any rate, thank you guys for watching. Again, thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. I know a lot of people do these spoiler videos, so if you're watching mine, I appreciate it. I will see you guys probably on Monday for more spoilers. My name is Timothy. Thanks again for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.